I'd like to call the village board for the village of Cary, or the village board meeting for the village of Cary for Tuesday, January 19th, 2016 to order with roll call, please.
Dudek,
Here.
Chapman,
Here.
Kraus,
Here.
Cavelli,
Here.
Kozler,
Here.
McAlpine.
Here.
Thank you. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance Thank you. I will now move to the open forum where the public is invited to make an issue-oriented comment on any matter of public concern not otherwise on the agenda. I have several people that have signed in. The people that have signed in, is it pertaining to a specific thing on the agenda, or is this something in general that you'd like to address the village board?
It's on the agenda.
Everybody else want to talk about what's on the agenda? All right, so we'll take that up at the proper time with that. Thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the January 5th, 2016 Committee of the Whole.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Kraus,
Yes.
Dudek,
Yes.
Cavelli,
Yes.
Kozler,
Yes.
Chapman.
Yes.
I think you have to abstain when you're here for committee.
You can still vote on it even
Okay.
if you're not here.
Thank you. Moving to the mayor's report, a couple of items I just wanted to update people on, that the Village of Cary was named number 7 for best areas to live for families, according to Wallet Hub, which is another good distinction for the Village of Cary. We seem to be racking up these awards, which is nice to hear. I have, in furthering the discussion that I've had with all the trustees, I've had individual meetings with the trustees just trying to sync up, getting people's input on things. We've talked about the ZPA, and I have notified all of the ZPA members that their terms that are expiring, that we will be going for an open application process. And I have also notified the chairperson of that. So we'll be moving forward with that. Also, Chris Clark and I attended the Northwest Municipal Conference, our normal monthly meeting. The past Wednesday, same of the old bad news for the state of Illinois. Still continuing to try to work through some budget crises and things, so we'll continue to keep that, keep you updated on that. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items number 1 through 4.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any of these 4 that you would like to have removed? Roll call, please.
Kraus,
Yes.
Cavelli,
Yes.
Dudek,
Yes.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Chapman,
Yes.
Kozler.
Yes.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve ordinance 016-01-04, granting the amendment to the zoning ordinance and conditional use for senior housing, variations to building setbacks, density and number of ground floor units, and an amendment to the Village of Cary Comprehensive Plan land use map for the property located on the southwest corner of Three Oaks Road and Feinberg Drive.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor, Board. This evening before you is a recommendation from the zoning board regarding a development proposal for the southwest corner of Feinberg Drive and Three Oaks Road. There are 4 basic actions that the petitioner is requesting approval of this evening, which the slide summarizes. First is a zoning text amendment to modify the village code to add provisions for senior housing. Specifically, it amends certain portions of the code or the zoning ordinance, certain tables and definitions within the ordinance to add regulations that would speak towards the senior housing projects within the community. Secondly, following the approval of the text amendment, they're seeking approval of a conditional use for senior housing on the subject property. And along with the conditional use, there would be the request for 3 variations. One is for density, to increase the number of units permitted by code. Second is for the number of ground floor units in the structure, as our code has a maximum of 6. And then also a variation to the front yard building setback for the project. Finally, they're also asking for an amendment to the land use plan of the comprehensive plan to change the land use designation for the subject property. I'll go into more detail of these throughout my presentation. The first request, again, is the text amendment. Again, it's to add senior housing land use regulations to the zoning code. Looking at the current, or as staff had discussions with the developer in the preliminary phases of the project, looked to see how the project would fall within our zoning regulations, and specifically looked at parking requirements and zoning locations for the project. In order to add regulations to the code, specifically we looked at, started with parking regulations, as a senior housing project would have less parking demand than a typical multifamily project would have. In order to add those regulations, it would require modifications to other sections of the code. Based on how our code is drafted, if you modify one table, as far as the parking table, it also requires subsequent modifications to the land use table and the supplemental standards table. So staff worked with the petitioner on potential modifications, which are presented here. Essentially, it's adding, and the table is on this slide, looks at the land uses as far as where senior housing would be either permitted or conditional use within the village. Proposal is to add senior housing as a conditional use within the R3, B1, B3R, B4, and BP zoning districts, which is the last row in that table that's shown there. Another modification that's proposed is to add definition for senior housing to define what senior housing is, create parking requirements, and then add supplemental standards for the proposed use. Looking at the zoning map for the village and what the text amendment would entail as far as what properties would be applicable for the inclusion of senior housing. The BP district, which is as proposed, get the cursor up here, is this brown color located here. So there basically are 5 pockets of within town that are zoned BP. The subject parcel, adjacent post office, and then the 2 office buildings that are slightly further to the east on 3 Oaks Road. There's another pocket that's along Industrial Drive next to the Goddard daycare, which is on Georgetown here. A vacant parcel that's directly to the east of it, and then a village-owned parcel to the south on Industrial Drive. Another area that's owned BP is the Sage Products building further on 3 Oaks Road. The Chalet Farm property on Route 31 is owned BP. And then finally, this campus where Village Hall, the Park District, adjacent parking lot and vacant lot are located are also zoned BP. So those are all properties that would have the same zoning designation as the subject property. Other properties within the village that the text amendment would allow senior housing would include the B4 district, which is where the current 3 Oaks Assisted Living Facility is located in the corner of Silver Lake and 3 Oaks Road. Another pocket at the corner of Cary Algonquin Road and Main Street, where there's an office building and the former Safari daycare. And then a pocket down by Harper Avenue and Cary Algonquin Road, the existing shopping center that's there with the 7-Eleven and adjacent retail use are properties that would zone B4, which would allow it. Finally, from the B3R district, there's the Country Commons Shopping Center, which is kind of the entrance to Trout Valley. There's a mixed-use building that's located there that is zone B3R, as is properties which front Main Street between First Street and the ComEd right-of-way are zone B3R. And also the R3 district are properties within the village that currently house single-family attached housing or apartments as Oak Knoll Apartments property, Westlake Townhome Development are all zoned R3. So under the proposed text amendment, all those areas would allow senior housing as a conditional use. Looking at it more holistically now with the slide, the areas that are darkened in would be areas where the text amendment would allow senior housing to go in as conditional use. Most of those properties are currently developed for townhouse projects or developments. And with this, we give an example of areas in town that the text amendment would allow for that use to go in as a conditional use. The other modifications that are proposed as part of the modifications are adding a definition of senior housing, which would be housing in which dwelling units are designed and operated exclusively for persons aged 55 years or older. The table on the left in the slide would add the parking regulations based off one parking space per dwelling unit would be required. And then the table on the right would be the supplemental standards table, additional requirements that would be placed on this type of project as far as the size of the lot that it would be on and distance from residential. Looking at the specific proposal for the site, assuming the text amendment is supported and approved, the project would be seeking approval of a conditional use for a senior housing project on the site. Additionally, they would ask for 3 variations. The first is the number of units on the ground floor for the structure. Our code in the supplemental standards section of our ordinance establishes a maximum of 6 units that can be on the ground floor of any multifamily or single family attached housing product. At the time that our zoning ordinance was drafted in the late 90s was a time period when a lot of development in the area was townhouse in nature, more single family attached type construction. So staff believes that that language was more geared towards that type of development. But there are other types of development as of this or apartments, multifamily buildings that might have more units on the ground floor. So with this proposal, they would be seeking a variation to that requirement. A second variation that's requested is a request variation to increase the maximum density permitted for the property. Under the zoning district, maximum that you can have for the size property that this would be is about 3.9 acre size. It's a maximum of 6.75 units per acre based off the proposed unit count of 68 units. That would equate to about 17.44 units per acre. So the petitioner is seeking a variation to increase the maximum units permitted on the site. That variation is, as the zoning staff report indicated, is in general range of what the Three Oaks Assisted Living Facility was approved at. That was around 15.3 units per acre. And the recent Garden Place apartment project was around 13 plus units per acre. Finally, the petitioner is seeking approval of a front yard building setback for the development. As proposed, or as this table indicates here, these are the basic code requirements for the BP zoning district as far as building setbacks. So the front and exterior side yard, which would be the frontages of the property that front onto Feinberg Road and Three Oaks Road, the minimum code requirement is a 40-foot building setback. The second column, based off the zoning district with the proposed height of the structure being over 30 feet, adds additional restrictions as far as where the building could be sited on the property. So for every foot that the proposed building exceeds 30 feet, an additional 2-foot requirement, setback requirement would be required. So along Feinberg Drive, which is the front yard, that would add an additional 20 feet, requiring a 60-foot building setback by code. The proposal provides a setback of 51.76 feet in the smallest point along that frontage, and that's a variation that they'd be seeking. The other yards, as far as the exterior side yard to Three Oaks Road, 70-foot requirement, they would be meeting with almost 90 feet. The interior side yard to the south, which is towards the shopping center, the rear of the Cary Square Shopping Center, would be met, as would the setback to the west. The building height as proposed is 40 feet, and the project will be meeting the lot coverage requirements for the zoning district. This slide just gives a little more detail as far as what the proposed setbacks are. As you can, the 89.54 feet is the setback along Three Oaks Road. That exceeds code requirement of 70 feet. The 50-foot setbacks all along Feinberg Drive, the variation would be for the lowest of those requirements, down to the 51.76 feet. But as you can see somewhat on this slide, the majority of the building is set back further than that point, with it approximately being 55 to 60 feet, depending on where the curve of the roadway is located at. So while a variation is necessary, it's not the extent that the entire building is going to be located at that variation setback point. Looking further out the site plan, the building has been situated in the property in a fashion that's located in the southeast corner of the site, further away from a stand of trees that are located in the west end of the property that currently screen the back of the Cary Square Shopping Center. This design was intended to preserve as much of those trees as possible. There would be some impact to trees on the western end of the building, but as indicated in this plan, landscaping would be provided between the subject property and the Cary Square Shopping Center to provide screening between the uses, and then provide additional vegetation along Feinberg Drive to further soften the appearance of the structure. This is one area that we staff focused on with the developer to try to ensure that as much of the vegetation on the western end of the property was maintained as possible to maintain that existing tree stand. Looking at the project as proposed as the 3-story facility, building elevations as shown here utilize a variable material palette, includes decorative CMU stone for the base, brick materials for the first and second floors, and then aluminum siding for the top level. We will have various bump outs along the facade that will break up the linear expanse of the structure and provide some play with light and shadow as far as the vertical or horizontal relief to the structure. Looking at in perspective, this kind of elevation gives a perspective of the building to show how some of that relief will look from different viewpoints. The top view from Three Oaks Road and the second view on the bottom would be the view in the rear from the shopping center. Looking at utilities and stormwater for the property, the subject site, when the J.C. Park detention basin was developed, was designed to accommodate any future development located to the west of Silver Lake Road towards the Cary Square Shopping Center. So stormwater for the subject property should be provided within that basin. As part of the final engineering process, the staff would require the developer to prove that there still is adequate capacity within the basin to accommodate the development. And if there is not, that either the basin be modified to provide some additional detention in that area, or detention or oversized utilities provided on site to accommodate that additional needed capacity. But as currently proposed, the project will connect to the water and sewer sanitary sewer lines that are behind the Cary Square Shopping Center, and then stormwater will be collected in the parking lot and routed around to Feinberg Drive, and then utilize existing utilities down to the J.C. Park detention basin. One of the other requests that was in the proposal was a modification to the comprehensive plan's land use map. As shown here, this is the land use plan that's included in the comprehensive plan. It's one page of the 100-page document, but speaks towards the future land use types that the village would like to see, or development that the village would like to see within the community. The land use plan is intended to be a long-term vision, looking at what types of uses would be appropriate for different properties, but would also include certain text document that's in there as well throughout the document as far as additional regulations or guidance that the board can utilize as far as reviewing land use requests. Specifically for this parcel, the subject parcel is currently designated for commercial development. which is similar to the properties further to the south and east. The proposal is to modify the land use for this property as part of the subject project to modify that land use designation to multifamily, which would be more in line with the end development of the site. Looking at guidance that's included within the comprehensive plan, there's several areas of the plan that speak towards various goals for the community, one of which is a housing goal, but there are other goals as well as far as economic development, focus on the downtown, public infrastructure, parks, recreation are all items that are have specific goals within the plan. Focusing on the housing plan, it encourages the incorporation of housing for all stages of life, not specifically looking at, mentioned specifically new families, young professionals, and also seniors. And the plan states that the village should give priority to quality design and construction for projects, rather than looking at a site-specific land use or end use designation, but looking at what the overall goals of the village are and whether or not a development would support those goals. So when staff reviewed this with the developer, based off some of the direction that's in the plan as far as focusing on facilities that would encourage aging in place and developing senior housing options, staff felt that this site might be an appropriate location for that, and therefore recommended support of the amendment for the comprehensive plan. The plan specifically does not identify areas within the village that are where future senior housing can go. It does provide additional direction as far as possible locations or features that should be incorporated within the location, specifically looking at pedestrian access to community facilities, transit, goods, and services. Looking at this site, it is close to existing commercial shopping located around 14. You do have parks that are further to the east, JC and Lions Park, and then also the office area on Feinberg Drive will provide services to individuals who may live in this type of facility. So with that, staff believe that it met some of the objectives of the comprehensive plan, was appropriate use from that standpoint, and recommended approval of the modification. Another guiding document that the village has adopted regarding, or that would relate to this project, is the recent affordable housing plan, which was adopted in June of 2015. Specifically, the plan was written in response to the requirements of the Illinois Affordable Housing Planning and Appeal Act. Specifically, when the village was identified as a non-exempt community from the requirements of the act, one of the objectives or requirements of that was for the village to adopt a plan. In our plan, the village established a goal of achieving a minimum of 10% of the housing stock as affordable, as defined within the act. And through that, the village just intended to promote affordable housing through the inclusion of senior housing. The plan did include a few incentives that the board may consider as part of any proposal. But obviously, it's the board's discretion as far as what type of incentives they may give for any project, depending on the validity of that project. Looking at this specific project as currently proposed with the 68 units, based off the calculations that were included in that plan, IDA's calculation that was for the village with this additional 68 units would increase the affordability percentage up to 8.9%, utilizing Carrie's calculation that we provided in there as far as what we deemed was the actual affordability of town would increase to 13% from that standpoint. On December 10th of 2015, the zoning board held a public hearing to review each of these requests. And during the testimony that was provided during that hearing, and also the exhibits and information that was presented as evidence, the zoning board made a few recommendations based off each of the motions, as detailed in this slide. Essentially, the zoning board recommended approval of text amendment to the zoning ordinance for the senior housing regulations. recommended approval of a conditional use for seasonal housing on the subject parcel, and approved a variation to reduce the required building setback from 60 feet to the 51.76 feet along Feinberg Drive. The zoning board recommended denial of a variation to increase the maximum permitted density from the 6.75 units to 17.44 units, and denial of a variation for the greater than 6 units on the ground floor. Also, the board had a split vote regarding the comprehensive plan amendment, which effectively recommend denial of the proposed change to the land use plan for the comprehensive plan. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding the proposal or discussion of the ZPA. Petitioner is also here, which will be able to provide additional information on the proposed project.
I'd like to call the petitioner up and give us kind of a synopsis of his views on this. I understand he might have some changes that he wanted to recommend, and then I will go to the public comment.
I think we should emphasize that we have 13 members of the public that have signed in to speak, so appreciate Mr. Berg coming up with that being kept in mind, so we have enough time for each speaker to state their comments for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the village board. Appreciate the opportunity to come back and talk to you all. I don't want to be redundant, so please move me along if I'm not succeeding with that. The first thing I do want to do is just take a minute and maybe clear up a couple of things that are out there sort of in the ethosphere floating around. There's a lot of noise around a development like this, and it's totally understandable because they're sort of complicated developments, and we could spend all night talking about some of those things. But I just wanted to hit on a couple of those if I could really quickly, and then jump in. It's more to clarify than anything else. First thing, I hear history has shown that most of these types of developments absorb occupants from outside of their geographic area. That is not our experience. We've developed a number of these developments. I don't know if someone has empirical data or where that comes from, but especially in a community like this where you have nothing, you have no non-subsidized age-restricted senior housing. It simply doesn't exist. And you have an aging population. We fully expect that it will be a very localized population, seniors, Cary seniors that are largely filling this development. And we have others here as well that can speak to that. So that's a little confusing, a little misleading, but I've heard it a couple times, and I just want to sort of hit that head on because that is not our experience whatsoever. Number two, government subsidized senior housing. I've heard that a few times. Just very quickly, this is privately run, privately owned, privately invested housing, which is why this type of housing is so successful. There's incredible market discipline that comes in to oversee and help to manage this development for a very long time. Those investors, as we've talked about, are private corporations that come in to take the tax credits that we secure, and over the course of a 10, 15-year period, they are involved in very, very stringent oversight in this development. What do they get for their efforts? We talked about it. They get a deduction in their federal income tax liability. But, it's important to note that aggregate deduction, if you will, is peanuts. It's tiny. It's absolutely nothing next to, for example, the home mortgage interest deduction and how that fits into the Internal Revenue Code and the cost of that, which is 10 to 15 times larger than this. So it's important just to kind of keep it in context because you have homeowners here in Cary. The vast majority of homeowners use an interest, home mortgage interest deduction as well. So to the extent that's subsidized housing, Well, we can talk about that, but I don't think so. But maybe there are other things in mind when people evoke that word. That's not what this is. People, I think, oftentimes hear the term affordable housing, and it's a really big umbrella, and they tend to, because they don't have the experience or the knowledge, group everything together. There's massive, massive need underneath market at 80% of the median income, 60%, 40%, 30%. Here we're targeting 50 to 60%, as we've talked about. And then finally, let's attract, a market rate developer to our town that might be able to offer affordable rents without, burdening the taxpayer. That's, the numbers say that can't happen. We've talked about this as well at Committee of the Whole, and effectively what this pie is showing is that the vast majority of funding for this development comes from the syndication of these tax credits. It's private equity. And because this unique tax credit is able to attract the private sector to come in and make these investments, it allows us to build to significant quality, more so than your market rate development, because we have a lot of bars to clear and hurdles to hit, to significant quality, but to keep the rents below market for seniors who are on a fixed income. It's that simple. So the market rate developer, quote unquote, would be charging 3 times the rent, or if there was a mortgage and a sale, those mortgage payments would be double or triple, and that's just the way the math works. So I just wanted to touch on those things very, very quickly. Let's keep moving, and we can continue to talk about this stuff, but I want to obviously refocus on the core issues here. We are committed to continuing to work with staff, and we've worked with staff, and then we came to Committee of the Whole, worked with staff, went to ZPA, worked with staff. Now we're back here. We want to continue to work with the village. We hear your concerns. We don't agree with all of them, but we hear the concerns and we want to address them. We want to make this work for everyone. Just as an example, we are willing to reduce the proposal to 62 apartments, decreasing the density per acre and the ground floor units, so that we can get really in the ballpark of the assisted living, which is within sort of spitting distance. We're trying to make an effort here. You need 68 apartments, you need 3 times that to serve the need that you have. But we wanted to take that step and show that we're going to be partners in this process, continuing to modify the building presentation. As you just saw from Brian's presentation, I think we've come a long way from Committee of the Whole, but we have a longer way to go yet on the designs and the structure. We're willing to roll up our sleeves and work with you, and if you want to talk about whatever, stucco, ephes, Hardy, we can have those conversations. But what you told us at Committee of the Whole, we didn't take personally. It was a first stab, but now we have a front that looks like the front of the building that faces Feinberg. We've made modifications that have made it better. The restrictive covenant that we talked about, we're already starting with a 30-year restrictive covenant for senior housing. Some of you have expressed concern, well, what happens after that 30th year? We're willing to extend the restrictive covenant and make it much longer to give you the assurance that it will remain senior housing, not necessarily affordable senior housing, but senior housing for many, many years. And we can talk about what might make sense. Adding pedestrian access, that's a big deal. The site obviously needs to connect east versus west. We don't have a choice. That's a condition to the conditional use, but we're working with staff on this. And we actually have already baked one version into the plan. We can talk about that. Enhancing the buffer between the back of the retail and our proposed use. Another concern expressed by Committee of the Whole, that we back up to the retail. We've given a lot of thought and consideration to what the berming looks like, the plantings that go on top of the berming, how many feet a year these plantings grow, and what it's going to look like. And it's not part of this process, so I almost hesitate to mention it, but it's relevant, and we haven't talked about it before other than the staff level, and that is that we would expect to be making a contribution to the village as some sort of a budget offset during this process as a partner. And I don't know what that means without staff telling us. Senior Center, Main Street, Parks District, but we want to be a good corporate citizen here and make a contribution. We're also willing to donate the excess land to the village so that it can be protected for certain uses. I think what we are doing, if we could bring it to fruition, would enhance the value of the remaining property. And I don't know if it's an acre and a quarter, but maybe, one day Jewel Osco expands, or there's a smaller commercial user that might want that property. But we would be willing for $1 to donate it to, to the village. So maybe that would provide some leverage. And there's a real value to that as well. Again, the site, where the site is within spitting distance here of Three Oaks Memory Care and Assisted Living. And there we are in the back of the retail center next to the post office. This site plan, this is the site plan Brian showed you. I'm sorry, actually it's not. This is a slightly smaller version, 68 to 62 units. The leg on the bottom basically became a little bit shorter. So the setback on the bottom grew from about 53 to 66 feet. We're already meeting that setback anyway, but it's a little bit tighter. We kept the parking exactly like it was. So now instead of 1.15 spaces per unit, we're now at 1.25, which, again, it's just additional. It's additional flexibility. We're willing to do that. It's above the need, but we can talk about that. The other thing I would actually just point out quickly on this site plan, we have, we're showing evergreens at the top of a berm. We're also showing from, I think that's Oak Valley at the northwest corner there, where it comes into the retail, we're showing that path, continuing a 5-foot path across our property from northwest to southeast to come all the way over to Feinberg and connect with the path on Feinberg to help people get over to the park and continue west to east. Is that the best idea? I'm not sure. I don't know that your zoning board would agree or staff would agree, but it's something that we talked about because the grades at Three Oaks are pretty significant. There are safety issues. There are real considerations, but this is one way we thought, let's provide an easement to the village and provide the pedestrian path that way. The view on the top, this is the elevation from the view from Three Oaks. The top is the original one that Brian just showed you. Here's what a 62-unit version would look like on the bottom. It's a slightly shorter building. We've also changed the roof pitch from 812 to 512. It's a little more subtle. And that would obviously, I know the recommendation is positive for the front yard setback, but that would even make it less, if any, of a variance request. But that, just to show you the flexibility that we're looking at and all the variations to make us fit in contextually in that area. The view from the parking lot, again, the top is the original 68-unit version, the bottom 62 units with the lower roof pitch and the shorter building. This, I haven't shown Brian, but this is another potential version, parapets, flat roof. I don't think it fits contextually there where you have peaked roofs, but there's a lot that we can do. We've really tried to study this. And again, just, looking at the different materials from decorative blocking to brick to fiber cement siding, we really want to study this more closely. And we just through this process have not had a chance to spend time with staff really digging in because there have obviously been other points of focus. But you can see the relief, you can see the variation, and we think that, again, this building has come a long way. But we're very open to flexibility in design, and I want to stress that. Floor plans, there, as I mentioned, in 20 seconds or less, there's a lot of programmable space in here for property management, and maintenance staff. There are offices there, but there are also community spaces, fitness rooms, computer area and library for the seniors. The idea here is to promote and create a vibrant senior community. That's the point. This is for independent seniors. So what is this designed to do? It's designed to deliver, again, a vibrant, service-enriched community for independent seniors living on a fixed income. That's what it's for. It's not intended to be a panacea. Obviously, you have a need to serve seniors at income levels below this and income levels above this. And we have the data, and we know that all of those segments are growing. We're responding to a very localized need for seniors in the primary market area, which is slightly bigger than Cary. There are 2,100 age and income restricted seniors. That senior demographic, that particular demographic is growing almost 12%. Comparable properties, again, there's nothing that's non-subsidized here in Cary that's age restricted. The other comparable properties in the wider area are almost fully occupied. Meets clear objectives within the affordable housing plan, also addresses needs within the comprehensive plan. I don't want to go back through this because Brian said it, but the one thing I will say is that that vote on the comprehensive plan land use amendment is a little bit misleading. It was a negative recommendation, but if you actually look at the video, you'll see that there was a very, very long conversation about the technical, relationship of the land use ordinance and the zoning ordinance, and why are we spending time? Why are we even amending the comprehensive plan? Do we need to do this every time there's a modification? This is just a guidance, a document to guide us. Why are we doing this? We're making a text amendment. Why do we need to change the land use? Ultimately, staff's recommendation prevailed, and to have consonance between the two documents, that was the goal, and why ultimately there was a vote to change that land use map, but it wasn't. It was really a technical discussion of the and some ex-planners on that board for sure, and I think they weren't comfortable with something that they hadn't sort of done before. So. But the comprehensive plan obviously looks for diversity in housing, opportunities for seniors to age in place. It doesn't get specific on where that senior housing should be, but it does call for flexibility on properties, along Three Oaks and how we do it. Fits harmoniously with surrounding uses. This is the last piece. For all the reasons that it's probably a much less desirable commercial site, those reasons make it good for this proposed use. You've got a very low traffic count there on Feinberg Drive. Very clearly, you have a very low traffic count. That's good for seniors. And by the way, seniors aren't going to be putting a lot or much onto Feinberg. But if you had a restaurant or a bank, or that's not attractive. It's also obscured from 14. You can't see it. That's good for this type of proposed use, not good for some of the commercial, would-be commercial users. Even respecting that buffer with Bright Oaks, again, this fits. A commercial user would really, I think, want frontage and visibility from Three Oaks, but obviously, that stand of trees, the berming is there for a reason, and it was put there for a reason, and that's something that we can respect. Let me move a little more quickly here. Impact fees anticipated for a 62-unit building, around $260,000. Real estate taxes expected to average $115,000 for this slightly smaller building. I just want to be clear, because there was an error in the memo that staff sent out, and it wasn't accurate. And the way that I presented this, both to committee of the whole and to ZPA, is that it was an average. I was using a figure of $135,000. That was an average over the 15 years, not year by year. We're assuming a 4% escalator. It starts lower than that, maybe 90,000 plus or minus in the first year, and it goes up accordingly. So I just wanted to clarify that, but we are paying taxes. Construction costs, total $18 million, a little bit more. Obviously, we'd be looking for local and regional subcontractors and suppliers. This proposal would bring additional feet on the ground, people with some residual income to spend at the center there and in the immediate area. The development timeline proposed would be to start construction next year, early next year, complete by early 2018, and I think we'd be occupied, 100% occupied pretty quickly, probably by the middle of 2018. So that's again a refresh. And as to the ZPA meeting, to be honest, it was sort of a frustrating experience because we sort of got mixed messages at the table, and we were basically approved for the use, but not for the density. It was still trying to figure it out. And positive recommendation on the text amendment. And I should also say that the first hour or so of that meeting was spent going over the details of this proposal, but there was a long time also spent on the comprehensive plan and what's the relationship of the comprehensive plan to the zoning code. So it was pretty late when we started sort of getting into the voting, and successively we spent less and less time on each piece, although the pieces became arguably more important. So ZPA positive recommendation on the text amendment. That obviously seemed to be a no-brainer. You needed that in the code. Positive recommendation on the conditional use. So again, approving the conditional use for senior housing on this property. One of the conditions is that the proposed improvement shall substantially conform to the attached plans and exhibits as part of the petition. So again, approving the use. Then it was very late in the evening, and at that point, the chairman made a comment to the effect of, he made a humorous comment to the effect of, we need to wrap this up, it's time to go home. But it was sort of humor at our expense because, as you know, the density issues did not pass. And when you really look at it, we spent a good bit of time talking about the text amendment, almost 17 minutes, 15 minutes talking about the conditional use. But after it was clear that the meeting needed to be wrapped up, spent about 1 minute and 18 seconds talking about the ground floor dwelling units issue, 1 minute 4 seconds talking about the density per acre, and it was incredibly frustrating. It didn't really make a lot of sense. You heard from staff tonight why the ground floor dwelling units may not even be relevant, that ordinance. It was developed at a different time for a different use. And then the density per acre, we didn't talk about it at all, which didn't really make a lot of sense. Obviously, there's precedent for this with the assisted living. It's very appropriate given the size of this site. But, also the history of the site, as you know, and this is my last slide, in 2006, you had the Mainstay Suites, and that was 96 suites. Different use, yes, but 96 suites. Same footprint, almost, a little bit smaller, 4-story building that didn't, frankly, come to the quality that we were showing. A 4-story building, 96 parking spaces, 25 units to the acre, something like that. So, maybe it was intentional that we cut the meeting short, but boy, was it cut short. And it's just that's the situation we're in. So I would leave it at that. that's sort of the overview. Obviously, I appreciate what you guys are looking at and considering and voting on. So thank you.
Thank you. Could you make yourself available for any potential questions that the residents or anybody has here? I'm going to go ahead and open up for public comment. Right now, I'd ask that since we do have 13, 14 people that are interested in speaking to the board, that will limit our conversations to about 3 to 4 minutes. Jake, will you help me with that? Kind of give me the high sign when it comes up there. I'm going to start with Frank Stuckelberg. Would you please state your name and address for the
My
record?
name is Frank Stuckberg. I live at 832 Meridian Way in Cary, Illinois, which is right behind the Whitehead Pantry. Or not Whitehead, but I'm in the 7-Eleven over on Sienna Point. This is just not for senior citizens. It's low-income housing, or whatever you want to call it, government subsidized housing. But it is also for some veterans today. The veterans today do not have any place to go sometimes to be able to get the subsidized housing and everything else. And the thing is, when a veteran gets a disability pay, whether it be $3,000, $1,500, that's on top of that Social Security that he's going to get, plus his retirement from other services that he's also worked for before, and he cannot claim that disability as income. He can only claim the Social Security he's getting and then the other investments. So in other words, he's entitled to the subsidized housing no matter what, and you cannot deny him of that. Within the last 4 years, McHenry County VHC took in over $8,697,000 within the last 8 years. That has escalated within the last 8 years of about, we're escalating at about $2.5 million a year right now of taking in new claims for veterans in this area of McHenry County. Last year, we processed over 345 claims. That's about 15 claims a month, probably a little bit more. But the thing is, we're talking about going, two of our representatives up in Woodstock, Matt and Sonia, they're talking about pushing to 500 claims this next year, 2016. This money is being spent right back here in McHenry County from their disability pay. This is over and above their Social Security and everything else. And the thing is that I've already transported 2 people outside of McHenry County to Wakanda because there was no room left up in Crystal Lake or Woodstock or anything else right now. And I transported them up there myself on my own time. The experience that I'm talking about this because I'm on the board up at the VHC in Woodstock. I'm a voting member. I worked very hard to be able to talk to these veterans and be able to get their disability pay and their benefits and everything else for what goes on in their society today. And it's a very time-consuming job, and I do not get paid for nothing. It's my free time, what I'm doing, because I'm trying to give back because of what they have given me. Is there any other questions?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for your service, Frank.
Holly Kelps.
My name's Holly Kelps, and I live at 773 Bayberry. And I want to first thank Mr. Berg for coming back. I'm on the ZPA board, and I was truly embarrassed by what happened. And as a realtor in town, I am so disheartened when we have to move seniors out of town so they could afford to live. They may have to give up their single-family home because they can't afford to take care of it. So we send them to Crystal Lake, Lake in the Hills, other places. They lose all their connection with their friends, family, churches, all the things they know in town and love and carry. So that truly makes me sad. I'm also a volunteer delivery driver for the Salvation Army Golden Diners. We go into Cary and Fox River Grove. I see the homebound low-income seniors. They truly need some place to live where they have socialization, and dignity. So I beg that you will consider this project from an experienced developer and get this in Cary, because we really need it. Thanks.
Thank you. John Trandell, no comments. Steve Lamal?
My name is Steve Lamel, 325 Bell Drive here in the village of Cary. Can't say it much better than Holly did, except that one of the things that we always talk about in the village and have been talking about for 15 to 20 years is economic development, especially commercial economic development. The fact is, Cary is no different than the city of Chicago. If you don't have people, you're not going to have development. You can sit and look at Capers property until hell freezes over. And until you get more people in this town with more spendable income through residential development, you're not going to develop that property for business. It's just not going to happen. Now you look at a property that has got no visibility commercially on Route 14, and in fact goes across the street from a commercial development that's 60 to 70% unoccupied for 10 years. And you want to hold that out for commercial development? Not practical. Bring a need to the community that's clearly here by servicing a population that is continuing to grow and will be vital as we continue to grow in the town. And I think you'll do some good for this town. If you close your eyes and say it needs to be saved for commercial development, I'll guarantee you 10 years from now, we'll be talking about the same circumstance. No senior housing, and by the way, no commercial development. Strongly urge you to consider this as appropriate. As an aside, I was at that ZPA meeting, and it was I've never been embarrassed to be part of the village of Cary. That was an embarrassment beyond, I'm shocked he's here. I'm absolutely shocked that he came back because he was degraded, derided. It was terrible. And all under the guise of a joke. Not a joke. Whether you say yes or no, the man deserves his time. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time too.
Thank you, Mayor. David Berg, I'm sure that you just signed in for the purposes of signing in. Charles Fox?
I'm Chuck Fox, and I'll reduce that number of speakers to 12. I signed my wife in. I learned later that was a mistake.
Uh-oh.
And I'm sure I'll hear about it. But I'm here to support what Steve and Holly has said. My wife and I have been here 35 years. I'm sorry, Chuck Fox, 359 High Road in Cary here. We've been here for 35 years. In some capacity or other, both personal and professionally, have worked with seniors during most of that time. And I think we're fairly well versed in the knowledge that there is a strong need here. You know, the details, I'm sure can be worked out, whatever the objections are, but the projections that Mr. Burke presented went through 2020, only 5 years, or actually 4 years from now. But if the growth that he's talking about follows the national trends, there's a Pew Center research study done in 2010 which projected the baby boom bubble going through 2030 and then some. So I suspect that slightly less than 12% growth at a minimum would continue through the 2030, which obviously tells us the need is not only here now, excuse me, but growing greater as time goes by. So I too urge strong consideration for approval of this particular proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry Waco?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Larry Waco. I am a 13-year resident here in Cary. I live at 9 Oakdale Court. Professionally, I am a senior housing developer in Grays Lake. I've been in that industry for 23 years. So this is my town, but this is something I know a little bit about. Aging in Cary. Our firm consulted with a company called Tracy Cross & Associates in Oak Brook, and they did a study for us telling us that in the Chicagoland area that our seniors want to be within roughly 5 miles of their family and within 12 minutes of travel time. So that isn't quite possible in Cary right now. We have a family friend, her name is Gina, she lives at 233 Bell Drive. And we've gotten to know Gina because we've been giving her assistance to get to the Jewel. It's 1.7 miles for her to get her groceries on foot. So we've helped quite a bit. But she's resisted because she wants to maintain her independence. Who could blame her? We're here as friends, we're here to do what we can. But that's the core thing, is independence for our seniors. That being taken away, and that's just something that is just, it's difficult. We all have families that, some of us have been caregivers at certain times in our life, and we all realize, how important this is. As for the site is a transitional one at that. I look at the proposal, I see that there's, consideration taken for our neighbors in Bright Oaks, and that's very important. I also look at the desirability of the site from a commercial. My opinion on that really doesn't matter. Nothing's happened. So, for me to say that there is no frontage on 14, yes, there's frontage on 3 Oaks, but it just isn't that desirable. Pearl, from my research, delivers. This is a company that has done what they promised, and from what I've seen, I also attended ZPA, and again, it was what it was. Ears were not given to all of the concerns that were brought to the table, but it's now on the board to see through that and to look at the merits of this project and to look at how it affects our seniors and their ability to age in this town. So thank you again for the time.
Thank you. Hard to read this next, is it David Jelnix?
Hi, my name is David Gelwicks, otherwise known as Broker Dave. I am a commercial real estate broker. I live at 3817.
We always wanted to know who Broker Dave was.
I know Broker Dave.
Now we know who Broker Dave is.
It's taken me 13 years. I finally get a chance to meet you.
I've been around for a little while. I am a senior citizen. But I just wanted to address a little bit. I've been connected with that property on 3 Oaks Road since about 2005. So with the owner of the property, with the seller. And it's been a mixed bag of doing that, I'll say that much. But as far as the inquiries that we've had on that property, even though it's zoned commercial and we advertised it as commercial, the number of prospects that came along that were interested in a commercial development, and this was prior to Feinberg Drive being completed. It was a dead-end street when we started, and it didn't go through like it does now. But then we had the hopes that when Feinberg Drive went through, that would create more interest from commercial developers, because back in 2005, that was still an active market, but the number of inquiries that we've got or had for commercial development has been very negligible. Most of the inquiries have been like Mainstay Suites. We had that, and then that fell apart because they didn't have the money to put it all together. And I think the village approved that building that was described by David Berg, and it was a 4-story building, and it was not exactly imaginative construction or architecture, but nevertheless, that was approved. And then we had other inquiries that were senior housing, and it all came along in the last few years. Senior housing back in 2005, 7, 8, or 9, it wasn't even thought about. It's only been in the last, I think, in the last few years that senior housing has been as important, or realized that it's as important as it is. But again, the inquiries that we've had over the years have been mostly for multifamily type situations, and almost zero on commercial development. It just hasn't happened commercially at all. And I don't know if it's because of the berm on Three Oaks Road, and whether or not that could be removed. But I think it belongs to the property owner who's buying the property, so I guess he can do what he wants with it. But I do think that that's the situation. And maybe because of the amount of frontage that the property has on Feinberg Drive, I don't consider it really as a commercial thoroughfare. It's I don't want to say it's a shortcut to someplace else, but it's not the number of cars. You could count maybe 150 cars a day, 200 cars. I don't know what the count is on that road.
But we're about at 3 minutes right now.
Okay. So traffic count is very important to any commercial developer, and I just don't see it happening there. So thank you.
Thank you. Jory?
My name is Jory Serbagia, and I am with Ludwig & Company. We are a property management company, hopefully with this new development. But I am also the property manager at the Residences of Lake in the Hills, which is a 55 and older, independent living, affordable apartment community. And so I'm kind of going to put the face on the applicants and hopefully soon to be residents of this development. And that is, based on our experience and the residents that have applied at Lake in the Hills and our other senior developments throughout Illinois. We advertised in the Daily Herald, and Northwest Herald, and that's where we got a majority of our applicants. And 62% of them were from the immediate area. So that's Lake in the Hills, Huntley, Algonquin, Crystal Lake. 22% were from Barrington, Carpentersville, Cary, Sleepy Hollow, Woodstock. We had an open house where we had a spotlight with our Congressman Peter Roscom, who came and spoke. And a few other residents have also spoke on the behalf of the development and the need for more affordable senior developments. And one of the quotes, which kind of stayed with me, and I think it kind of explains it all, is I think every resident here can probably testify to the fact of how important it is for us to honor our seniors and to keep them in the communities where they live. So we have the residents, or the applicants and residents from the immediate area, some that have been out of state, and that was due to the fact that their kids work or live in Lake in the Hills or in the immediate area, and they wanted to have their parents close by. So we have, retired homemakers, nurses, teachers, veterans, that all live at Lake in the Hills. And some of them were from Cary, and I would have loved for them to come out and speak on their behalf. But right now they are scheduling and planning their 50s sock hop for Friday. So. But I told them that I would talk on their behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike and Kim?
Hello, Mike McQuaid, resident of Cary for 25 years now, 763 Blazing Star Trail, and I'm definitely, this is a great opportunity for Cary to take this development into this town. I also work for Ludwig & Company, and I'm a maintenance regional manager, and I do maintain one of David Berg's buildings. Just to let you know, on the construction end of it, was there all the way through the construction end. Professional contractors, great training, just so we can, when we maintain the building after being done, we've had nothing but great things to say about this building and the developer, and also Pearl Development. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. William Versgrove?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bill Bursgrove. I've lived in Cary for all 57 years of my life, and I think it's really important that we as a village make it an option for our citizens to stay here. I have no intention of ever going, but there are people who, that I personally know that have had to leave because of not having a place. And I would just ask that you all consider this very strongly, because there are a great number of people and residents of Cary that would like to stay here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Joyce?
My name's Joyce Bernicus, and I live at 959 Karma Drive. That's in Sienna Point. I've owned 3 homes in Cary, and I thought I was going to be the longest resident, but Bill beat me. I've only been here 58 years. And I worked in Cary 19 years in insurance and 17 years in real estate. And I feel there is a real need to have housing for those of us who've lived here and contributed to the community all these years and would like to stay here. And I know that commercial may produce more tax dollars. That seems to be the driving factor for the negative votes. But sometimes you have to look beyond the dollars and you have to look at the big picture. And I think it is more important. One comment was made that it isn't fair to expect all the taxpayers in Cary to support something like this where there would be less taxes, but maybe the young people and the families should take into consideration the fact that those of us that have lived here for so many years are supporting their children going to our schools. So it's not a one-way street. We all contribute in some way. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that didn't sign in that would like to address the village board? Come ahead.
My name is Erin Hauk, 1332 Galway Drive. I know most of you because I attend all these meetings. One of the things that I'd like to offer that hasn't already been said, because I do echo the sentiments of what has been said before me, but I was part of the comprehensive planning meetings. I attended all of them, so I can speak with great confidence when I say that we talked about the fluidity and the flexibility of the comprehensive plan. At no time did we talk about being it a specific document that would stand one-dimensional. I think to get caught up in the semantics is foolish. I think that we really need to look to the plan as being a vision. This plan, this project fits that vision. And I hope that those of you who didn't have a chance to participate in the comprehensive plan trust those of us who did to say that this is a plan that's worth having, a project worth having. Thanks.
Is there anybody else that would like to address the village board?
Good evening. David Miller, 65 Highway 14, Cary. That was every comprehensive plan also, and it was as a working document. And the number one thing in every one of the meetings was affordable housing for seniors. And being as close to the other senior citizen housing, I think is a great opportunity. I think we got good opportunity to do some good for the village here, for your residents. Thanks.
Thank you. Before that, is there anybody else who would like to address the village board before we go ahead and close open forum? All right, we'll go ahead and close open forum. Trustee Chapman, did you want to read that into the record?
Yeah. In deference to our residents who have been here a long time, I want to read a letter that we got today from Ruth Mackey, and it says, "My name is Ruth Mackey, and I've lived in Cary for 90 years, all my life." So sorry, she's got your beat. I reside at 26 Wagner Drive and own the small apartment building at the corner of High Road and Cary Street in downtown Cary, along with my daughter Laura. I just want to put my wishes into words that you vote to approve the application to build a much-needed facility for affordable senior housing at 3 Oaks Road and Feinberg Court. Thank you sincerely, Ruth. I thought she deserved the opportunity to get that read into the public record.
Thank you for your comments. Now we'll go ahead and open it up to village board discussion. Could we have the petitioner come back up in the event that there are some questions suited for you? I'd like to open up for the board for questions, please.
Well, I'll make my one comment before I vote to approve this. And that is, by 2050, there will be 9 billion people on our planet. They won't be looking at brick and mortar stores. They'll be looking for places to live. And we need to be thinking as a landlocked community, whether we should rezone, not whether we should rezone, but where is the best choice. I can tell you that I appreciate the property owner's representative telling us, because that was a question I had, is how many, hits have you had for the commercial? And so we zoned it that way. The permission expired, and it's not going to happen. But we have an opportunity here today to put something in action. And I just like to say thanks for sticking with us, and we appreciate it.
I have a question regarding the email you only sent to Mayor Kalnick and Trustee Dudek. In it, you put, we are willing to give you a 100-year restrictive covenant to make sure this remains senior housing and not necessarily affordable. Can you explain that further?
Well, sure. The affordability restrictions expire after 30 years. So my sense is the intent is that we want to make sure that this remains senior housing for the long term, seniors with unrestricted means for the long term, so it doesn't turn into something that you don't want there in an apartment building or student housing or something that evokes fear down the road. It's not necessary because we view this and we intend that this would be senior housing in perpetuity. So in year 31, after the affordability restriction expires, it would still, and actually I think your text, the text amendment and that language covers this already, but just for belt and suspenders, we would give you that extra assurance to record a restrictive covenant for a much longer time so that it stays seniors long after any of us is here.
So then after 30 years, it's no longer deemed affordable.
Correct.
I have a question in general for those of you who support this project. How many of you plan on living there and or have relatives that plan to live there? Okay. And Mr. Berg, I need to go back to the beginning of your presentation here where you mentioned some noise and somebody mentioned that people were coming from outside the area. What was your comment on that?
Well, I've heard, and seen comments that there's a concern that we're bringing in residents who are not local and who are not Cary residents. Maybe the fear is that they're coming from far and wide, and that's not the case. That was the only point I'm making. Because you have sort of this significant and growing need, we're addressing, by and large, your very local need here in Cary. That's all.
See, I have an issue with you presenting it the way you did because that quote came from you. You were the one that told the chairman of the ZPA board that most of the people weren't from Cary.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
Can you give me the specific comment?
Areas, not when he pressed you on how many people from Cary would be living there, you said it was people from Lake in the Hills, Algonquin, other areas.
Oh, yes. Okay. You're referring to the primary market area in the market study.
Yeah.
Yes, it's slightly more extensive than just the village boundaries. I mean, we know what's happening within the village specifically, but in reality, you know, obviously, given your municipal
Well, I
lines.
just didn't appreciate you selling it that way. Personally, I've had one person write me supporting this project. I have number 2 up here today that I was presented with, which is fine. But moving on, you went on to say that this wasn't government subsidized housing. That's not true. Why would you say that? You stand in front of this board and then you say that. And I don't understand why, after all this that has happened to this town, you would stand up there and make that claim.
Look, I think, again, the general public doesn't understand affordable housing, and they conflate.
But here's what you said.
No. Do you want me to address that?
You said the home interest deduction is the same as what this is. It's not even close. My home interest deduction on my mortgage is not a dollar for dollar credit. It's an offset of my taxes, 28% of my tax rate. This is a dollar for dollar credit. Okay? So don't get up there and preach about how this is the same. It's not. It's not even vaguely the same.
Right, I agree it's not the same. What I was saying is that the home mortgage interest deduction is much bigger. It's a much bigger cost to the American taxpayer, dwarfs this tax credit. That's what I was saying.
That's how I understood it.
My next statement is, you said that market rate affordable housing can't happen. I don't understand that statement. What is wrong with people in this town that you think we can't attract a builder that will build senior affordable housing that is market rate and affordable to our seniors? And what this comes down to is taxes. What is happening in the state of Illinois is that property taxes are getting so large that it's pressing our seniors out of their homes. Therefore, then, now they're building government subsidized housing to offset the seniors who can't afford to pay the taxes, and it's a vicious circle. Okay? You said you're open to flexibility about the design. All I say is meet our ordinances. Meet the ordinances. What's wrong with following the rules? We have rules and standards, and you're the second developer now that is coming into our town who decides they don't want to follow them. So we're presented with, what is it? Three variances, conditional use, a change to the comprehensive plan, all these things. And I'm saying, if this is so great, just meet our ordinances, follow the rules. That's all we ask. And we haven't even said you can't build it here. In fact, I think there are good areas where this could be built in Cary. And I don't really think, in reality, this has anything to do with senior housing. In reality, this has to do with the use of that parcel of land. Okay? And most people don't agree in this town that this use is appropriate. It doesn't have anything to do with senior housing. How about, why not build this over on the west side of Cary by Aldi and the Goddard School? What is forcing this is the only place in Cary to build it?
There are a lot of questions there. You know, my concern is that, you know, you have different rules for different users. That's how I'd answer that question. So I can't even say anything further about that. But to approve what was approved, and I realize it was a different body here, a different board in 2006. But you know, your ZPA didn't even give us the courtesy of a discussion, your chairman, on some of the critical issues. So I can't answer that for you, but it's pretty frustrating. I don't think we were looking for anything really significant.
Trustee Kostler, would you like me to comment on one aspect of what you said, which is the concept by the Goddard School?
Sure.
I want to indicate for the record that we had a second project over the summer timeframe, similar before Pearl went into the cycle. Developer out of Northbrook had looked at a site right next to the Goddard School and pulled away from the project during at least this cycle of tax credit applications, it appears. Our understanding of why, from what we were, and again, the Pearl project also did the same last year. They had, some interest in the site and things didn't work out. With respect to the site by the Goddard School, it sounds like it was a combination of purchase price as well as the fact that the bank that has ownership rights of the land, they weren't comfortable with the uncertainties of the tax credit process from the standpoint of having to go through additional hoops after village approval. So there was it was a senior housing project concept for that site. They pulled away because they couldn't agree with the bank.
And for your independent seniors to age in place, you can't just stick them on a piece of land because it's zoned residential. Can't do that. They need to be in proximity to services and amenities,
Well, I
as we've
think
said
for
time and again.
people on a limited budget, it would be better if they were close to a grocery store like Aldi, not the most expensive grocery store in Cary, okay? And there are parks, and everything you point out as a plus to your location can be offset with another location in Cary. Now, moving on, the main issue I have with this is the text amendment. Okay, I think that we do need to address our ordinances with senior housing. This has nothing to do with affordable senior housing in general. But I do not believe in a text amendment that allows a residential within a commercially zoned area. You are opening up the door, and that's all of you out there, that now if we let commercial, residential in a commercially zoned area, stand by that there's going to be commercial and residential areas. Okay, that's setting it up for it. I'm sorry, that's the way it is, and that's the precedent it sets. I also do not like the parking standards of one car per unit in this text amendment. My point with the text amendment is I think this is a larger issue that needs to be brought back to the board at a future date. We're jumping the gun and changing rules without thinking it through thoroughly. And these issues need to be discussed by the board. I have more to say, but I'll let others talk right now.
That caught my attention also about the senior housing and the text amendment. I think that is something that we need to address as a board and look at that more closely. I just want to say it almost sounds as if we vote no on this, that we're against senior housing. I don't think anybody up here is against senior housing and realizing that there is a need in the community for senior housing, affordable senior housing. Both my grandmothers utilized, it was a voucher system, so to speak, and they were able to stay in their apartments, but they got government assistance, but they were able to stay in their apartments and continue living in Cary. Okay, it wasn't a concentrated element of just low-income seniors living in one place. They were scattered. So they lived in the Oak Knoll apartments. Okay, that's where they were. But this was like 30 years ago when they lived there. So I'm not against senior housing, trying to find a way to keep seniors in their homes. I'd like to find more ways, develop more of a Meals on Wheels type program, a transportation system in the village that would get people from here to there. Mr. Waco, you brought up that you had picked up Gina on your way home one night, and that's how you got to know her. I think I might have picked her up also at another time. I picked up a woman, there was a snowstorm, she was walking down to the train station. I don't know if she works downtown and cleans buildings or not, but it's the same person. But I also picked up somebody and I felt like, but she lived in her home, she lived on Bell Street. And I wanted to find a way that would, enable people that could stay in their homes. Let's find ways that we can lower the tax burdens on people that are seniors living in their homes and that. Have you actually really looked at the plans that they're proposing tonight? There's no outdoor balconies, there's no patios on these units. There's laundry facilities that are shared on each floor. It's not somewhere that I would necessarily want to put my mother. So I just think Cary can do better. I think Cary can do better. So.
Any other comments?
I have some. I think there's a lot of emotion about this, just as there was about Pedcor. The interesting thing is all the emotion tonight seems to be for it as opposed to against it, which I find very interesting. I did learn, as did Chris, Mark, yourself, Dave too, that during the Pedcor process, and I think we should get this satisfied so that we all understand it, that there is a scoring system that IDA goes through. And we were told at that time there was only minimal amounts of properties in the village of Cary that scored high enough in order to get the kind of financing that David's firm is talking about. I don't know if that's 100% correct. That's not my area of expertise. I think our staff could very easily confirm that, and that would, I think, maybe clarify some things for everybody. And we should find that out. I got to tell you that I've been supportive of this from the get-go. I'm glad to hear that you're interested in making some concessions, although to be honest with you, I see no reason why this shouldn't be 4 stories and 85 units. I look at the design, and I think I said it the first time you were here, the design that you originally put before us was nothing to speak of. I still have some concerns about this one. I think that this process should see a building that is substantially nicer looking than this, could have a modified middle that could go up 1 more story, perhaps for some additional units with a clock tower, and I mean, the kind of thing that ever since I served with Mayor Lamal in the back over there 10 years ago, we've been talking about this town that we've never put into action. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I said 2 weeks ago to Ms. Kelp's comment today, I was embarrassed, and I said it to this board. I said to my fellow board members, go back and read those minutes if you didn't get a chance to either go to the meeting or read the minutes. It was embarrassing the way we handled that. I don't understand why it went the way it went. I had asked for some information. I don't know if anybody read Exhibit D. Certainly most members of the public haven't read Exhibit D. But Exhibit D to Brian's item today indicates that for nearly 20 years, going back to 1998, the ZPA has routinely 100% of the time agreed to text amendments to the comprehensive plan to change the zoning from business use to residential. Why didn't we give this gentleman the same benefit of the doubt? Why didn't they hear him out? Why did Member Graziano vote for putting the senior housing at that location, but not vote for the text amendment? It's clear in the minutes that there was a concern that members of the ZPA, and I admit I did not go to the meeting, but I sure as heck read these minutes 3 or 4 times over, so I knew what I was talking about. It's very clear that that meeting was a disaster, and that the people that voted, 6 people, didn't know what the heck they were voting on. And I think a couple of them voted on emotion. So I wonder, in hindsight, as I had asked our attorney this morning, or not this morning, but this afternoon, should we pull this thing and send it back to the ZPA now that Member Graziano understands that, in fact, the ZPA has 4 out of 4 times for nearly 20 years voted to approve or to recommend approvals as text amendments? I don't know. It's a question I still have for myself. But I think this is an excellent development for town. I think it raises a lot of opportunities for our seniors. I think you have done a very nice job making some accommodations to us. I believe there are probably further things that should be done. And the fact that we're cutting potentially, 6 units off of this to make something a little smaller, that concerns me and it frustrates me, because that means there's 6 more seniors in our town that aren't getting served. I'd rather see it the other way and see 20 more seniors get served by perhaps a 3.5-story building where, we don't have 747s last time I checked flying over Cary. We should worry about another 10 or 12 feet in height. So I'm going to support it. I appreciate your due diligence and continuing to work with us, and I hope others think the same way. Thank you.
I just want to state that I kind of listened to everybody, and I have talked to and listened to a lot of comments. I did get one negative comment from a resident about it, but everything else I've heard is positive. When I ran to be a village board member, one of the things that I put on my platform, if you want to call it, was senior housing, because we just don't have it. And It's very sad when people live their life somewhere and they can't retire in the community that they grew up in. And I think that it's a disservice if we do not honor our seniors and respect what they have done. I think that Joyce made a very good point, and that is that these seniors all these years, how many times have you supported our local schools and paid for children's education when you didn't have a child going to that school? And to throw it up and make it sound like, oh, well, now we have to carry the burden for the seniors. Well, gosh darn it, I'm ready to carry that burden. I'm offended that people are making it sound like we shouldn't be doing that. I think, unfortunately, you're caught in a little bit of the crossfire of the Garden Place PEDCOR emotions that's still going on in this community. And I think that us as elected village officials, our job is to take that emotion out and look at every project and every development that comes to let it stand on its own merit. Not to bring something with us, some baggage from something previous that we boxed ourselves into, that we can't look at a project objectively. No matter how it's funded, whether it's through tax credits, why do we care where someone's getting their funding from? It's not coming from me, the taxpayer. It's coming from individual private investors. So I just, I am definitely in support of this project, and I feel that there's a huge need and that we owe it to our seniors, to our residents, to tell them that we feel that it's important for them to be able to remain in the town and the community that they grew up in and raise their own children in. So that's where I'm at with it.
Any other questions or comments?
Once again, I don't think anybody said you couldn't build here. I think there's just a discussion about the parcel you've chosen.
But broker Dave came up and told us that he's had no activity on this property. Let's be realistic. Talk to the real estate agents that have come up here and at least chatted a little bit. That is not a good location for a commercial property. You don't have any visibility. You can't put a sign. You're not going to see something from 14 there. That's a great place to nestle something in. You've got seniors that can walk to the grocery store. You know what? There could be senior buses and they could drive them to Aldi, if that's what we needed to do. But the bottom line is they could go there. They can walk to the eye doctors. They can go to the dentist. They can go to the post office. They can go to Galatti's. They can spend tax revenue in our village where they want to be. And if these guys are filling them and they're taking people in Algonquin or Lake in the Hills or wherever it happens to be because Cary residents don't have somewhere to go, then shame on us if we have that opportunity to provide that for them.
Well, I think properties sell when they're priced right, okay? You cannot argue that there haven't been inquiries on a property if it's not priced right. And this property is motivated on an estate trust sale, and maybe that's why now we have somebody interested because the price dropped. Have we thought of that?
I think the question is this a good location for this development? Is it a good development? Does it look like it's a reputable builder? We've heard from people that have worked, that have been from the ground floor, and I apologize, I don't remember the gentleman's name at the end here that you chatted, that he was there from the ground up, saw the quality construction that they brought. Why not take the piece of property? Why would it be bad there? Tell me what's bad about it being there. You even saying you don't mind if it's in a different location. Why not there?
I think I've made that clear.
You haven't to me. I don't understand why not there.
It's very clear that you cannot take a business park zoned area and put residential in there. You're opening up the door for
Sure
commercial.
you can. That's why we have this.
I don't agree with it, and I'm entitled to that.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So
But you're saying you can't. You can.
you're
You just don't think it's a good
setting a
idea.
precedent for other situations where commercial will be forced into residential areas.
Don't you have to look at each
On
situation
top of
individually?
that, you are not getting the sales tax revenue that could be realized from this property.
No.
Kim, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
You know, I guess some of the stuff that Trustee Kraus said I would echo is, you know, I don't think anyone's necessarily against affordable senior housing. As a matter of fact, you know, when we approved the affordable housing plan, we actually said that Cary's at 13% above what, you know, is expected of us. And I voted yes to approve that plan. And then, you know, we just had the Haber property come through, and this board approved that. And it was presented to us in such a way that that would be attractive to seniors. You know, then we have PedCore coming through the Garden Place Apartments, which is going to be 60 units available, which is another affordable housing. So I just want to get clear, I don't think anyone is against that. I also, you know, looked at the comprehensive plan, and there's so much in that comprehensive plan, including wording like broadening the tax base. Retail has to be a point of focus for Cary. So I think there's both components in there, not just about, you know, more affordable senior housing. And when you talk about platforms, one of the platforms I ran on was bringing more business and a broader tax base to Cary. So I think that is very important. I also have concerns about this only being restrictive or only being affordable necessarily for 30 years. So that's kind of where I sit right now. And plus, not only that, but if you look at the business park district, when you showed that map, and that's less than 10% of the total map of what Cary is. You look at the residential, and it dominates what we have here in Cary. That's just my opinion.
Well, I feel like I need to chime in on this. You know, what we have here is an isolated surplus piece of property that's been for sale. I've been in the village of Cary for almost 25 years, and it's been for sale the entire time. I thought a lot of it was by broker Dave, which I got a chance to meet today. But I look at the physical location of this, and I look at the proximity to the Jewel Shopping Center, our largest shopping center that we have in town. I look at the proximity to our professional buildings where the doctors and the dentists and other types of services are. I look at that we have our largest restaurant is a spitting distance from where this could be. I look at the retail sales tax that's going to be generated by a group of residents that's going to spend their money in the village of Cary. That is a huge benefit to the village. I look at the fact that through the whole PedCore process, time and time again, people that came to address the board said, why can't you make this an affordable senior project? And I will let you know, I have had one email in opposition of this. I've had more public conversations with seniors that don't have access to email or social media that have said that they're afraid to show up at a meeting, that they need this and they want to have this, they want to age in place. I presided over every comprehensive planning meeting. In every comprehensive planning meeting, it was identified that we need affordable housing. Nowhere did it say that we would isolate one particular area for one particular project. Jim, to your point, you had mentioned before, I'd heard something that you wanted to have that be a retail center. Well, that would have to be rezoned.
I didn't say retail center.
Well, if you put a retail center there that's generating retail sales tax, that would have to be rezoned. It's a small, isolated piece of property that we're going to give back to the seniors of our community that have paid their dues in town, that want to stay in town. They want to be a part of the community that they've helped, you know, grow. I mean, we wouldn't have half the things we have right now if we didn't have the seniors that are here right now. And I think it's a great project. I agree that we need to, if this does make it through the village board, that there are some tweaks that we need to make in the overall design. I'd like to see about perhaps implementing some sort of a senior center aspect to your ground level. If you're removing the units that you have at the ground level, well, why can't we create some sort of a space for seniors to congregate and have card parties or a 50s party or whatever? Give them an opportunity to be a part of that. And I think that it's important for seniors like to be with each other. My mother-in-law just moved to a senior center and loves it. She's never been happier. And it's because they're with their own population. They can talk about the same things. They've gone through the same issues, and it creates a huge sense of community. And I think that that's something that we need to realize, that our seniors need to be together so that they could feel like they are part of a specific community. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us. I've heard it time and time again that we need affordable housing, even through the comprehensive plan, as I said, and through the whole PedCore process and the hearings that we had with that. A lot of the people say, why can't we make this a senior housing project? Well, we have an opportunity to provide that with an upscale builder that promises to deliver a top-notch facility for our seniors that deserve this. And I think that I would ask the village board to consider moving this forward so we can put affordable type housing concepts behind us, and we can move forward with the other areas that we have in town, the Sulky property, the Caper property, looking at broadening our horizons with other opportunities. It's not necessarily all about residential, but we have an obligation when we have somebody petition the village board that we give them an opportunity to be heard, and we give them an opportunity to present their case. And I feel that this petitioner has done his due diligence. If you look at the notes from the zoning board, he's already come into compliance, I believe, with the variation to increase permitted density. He's reduced the number of units. We've asked other developers to reduce units. They've reduced the units, and the development has been passed. He's also eliminated the ground floor units, which was denied. He's changed that. So right there, it gives me an indication that he's willing to work with us. With regards to the comprehensive plan, I've said it before, it's a fluid document. It's supposed to be something that gives us some sort of a focus, gives us a desire of what we see going where. But we can't put a senior housing project out in the middle of nowhere where it's not by any type of service that they can walk to. You guys, Jeff and who else had mentioned that they've picked up seniors to bring them somewhere because they want to maintain their independence. Well, this is a great opportunity for us to give the seniors that live in the village of Cary an opportunity to continue with their independence and continue living in the community that they've served so well. And I would implore my fellow board members to move this forward, and let's be done. Let's move forward with this and look on the brighter side of things. We've got awesome opportunities ahead of us, and let's let that be the focus. We need to move away from this dialogue where people think that somebody's getting something for nothing. It's the way it is. It's just it's how it works. It's a program that is, until it is taken away, that people are entitled to use. So we need to give them the benefit of the doubt, move this thing forward, and welcome Pearl Development and have a quality senior center in the village of Cary.
I have a question, and maybe Brian, Jake, maybe Mayor or Chris, you might know, because admittedly I don't. Is there any spot in town today that he could build this development that we wouldn't have to change zoning for? Because I'm not aware that there is.
Brian will answer that.
Simply stated, to answer your question, the answer is no.
Okay. I don't have any follow-up questions. Thanks.
So in other words,
Can
for
I-
you to build it all, we're going to have some type of change. Otherwise, you can't go. So if everyone here is saying we're not against it, if you're for it, then you got to be all in. You got to be for it, guys. Because there's got to be a change to make it work anywhere.
There's a difference, I think, between housing that seniors can afford to buy and large density projects like apartments. So I do think there is a difference there. That's my opinion.
There is, but I think a lot of seniors don't have the wherewithal, number one, to maintain a single-family home. And I think this is meant for seniors that are not able to stay in their own, not it's assisted living, but that just are not in a position that financially that they can stay and maintain a single-family home any longer. So they do need to go into something that's a higher density. I mean, unless I'm misunderstanding what the needs in your research says, maybe you could clarify that for us.
Yeah, I'm sorry, can you?
Isn't the reason that this development, Trustee Cavalli was saying that there's a difference between, affordable housing or, basically whether it's a single family home or whether it's high density apartment complex. But I think the reason you're looking at that is because there's a big need for that type of housing.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
That's the housing that the need is for.
This age restriction will be 55, but the average age is going to be into the 70s and 80s, and these are seniors, 85% of which are probably widowers that are looking for security. They're independent. They're looking for a community. Right now they're isolated. They're in your community. They're in homes they shouldn't be in. They're making bad economic decisions, and they're not here because they're isolated, and it's not a good thing. That population is growing. And with respect to Trustee Dudek's suggestion about maybe going back to ZPA, I totally appreciate where that's coming from, except I wouldn't support that because I feel like we're moving, we're going to end up in a very similar place. Let's let's be done with it, or maybe you want to continue this discussion, I don't know. But I also feel compelled to offer one more piece of information to make things maybe a little bit more complicated. On July 23rd, 2014, representatives of Cary Matters went to Ida and to have a discussion about the Pedcore property, which you probably know about. Cary Matters was represented by Mr. Kozler, Ms. Scott, Mr. Reen, and former trustee Lukasik. And they met with two of the most respected housing finance people in the entire state. Christine Moran, who is the director of multifamily programs, and Alan Quick, who is their basically strategic and planning director. And there are a couple of things that were clear from that meeting that are recalled clear as day. Number one, there was a deference to Mr. Kozler at the time. I guess he was chair of that group. The trustee was there representing the trustees, but there was really deference shown to Mr. Kozler. Number two, there was mention of the need for affordable senior housing a few times in that meeting. And number three, that members and representatives of Cary Matters specifically pointed to this site at Three Oaks and Feinberg Drive as being more appropriate for affordable housing. So I'm not sure what changed, but I think we can all sort of read between the lines here. And I think that's something that you guys all need to consider, because this is, it just smells of something different, and it's really frustrating, respectfully.
Were you at that meeting, sir?
No, and you can bring everyone who was at that meeting and tell me something different.
No, I don't have to tell you, I was at that meeting, okay? So don't get up here and tell me what I said, okay? When you're sitting in front of this board.
I didn't say you said it.
And you say that we're going to pay this amount of taxes per year. Oh, oops, now it's lower. Oops, now it's higher.
No, that wasn't my mistake, Trustee Kozler. Again, that wasn't my mistake. That was staff's error.
We can go at this all day. I call the question.
Hold on just a minute. The attorney has something he wants to mention.
For your benefit, because of the posture in which the applications have come before the village board, you're familiar with the fact that two of the variances did not receive a positive recommendation. As a result of the fact they didn't receive a positive recommendation, in order for the village board to approve them, it requires 4 votes, 4 trustee votes. The mayor's vote doesn't count towards overriding a negative recommendation of the ZPA. Based on the preliminary comments, I don't know whether you're going to get 4 positive votes to override those negative recommendations on the variances. So you can proceed with the vote and run the risk that they don't pass, or you can withdraw the application, or you could follow Trustee Dudek's recommendation and ask to be sent back to the ZPA for further advice. But I want to at least admonish you on what the posture of the applications are before the village board and what the votes have to be.
Jim called the question, though, and I seconded it before you started speaking.
So let's vote on whether or not the question shall be called. That's the appropriate, their vote needs to be taken.
Is there, just point of clarification, can you continue to actually to the Board of Trustees, to the next meeting? Can the discussion be continued?
There's a motion on the floor first.
Yes.
And what exactly is the motion? To
Call the question.
And if you would like to continue the discussion, then you would vote no. If you want the discussion to end immediately and go to a vote, then you would vote yes.
No, I think we're voting on the motion.
To call the question.
Call the question.
Okay.
There's a motion to call the question. There's no debate on that, but you have to vote on whether or not you will end debate.
Roll call, please.
Crouch,
Yes.
McAlpine,
No.
Kozler,
Yes.
Chapman,
No.
Cavelli,
Yes.
Dudek.
No.
Motion fails.
So then we go back to the original motion. Roll call, please.
No,
No, we're having discussion.
Oh,
So I'll support that, Rick, if you want to make that motion. I want to give it another chance here for more discussion. I think after tonight, I think,
I guess, I don't know how to phrase the motion, but I'd make a motion, something to the extent that I would like to pull this item off the agenda. Have it go
postpone this?
to pull the item and have it go back to the ZPA for consideration, including the information that was supplied by Brian Simmons in a memo dated January 13th, 2016, as it relates to actions by the ZPA going back to 1998.
you can vote on that motion to send it back. You can vote on that.
Okay.
Because it's not a final action on these issues.
Do you want to read what that motion would be? What you have?
Go ahead.
I think the motion was to refer the application back to the ZPA for reconsideration of the items on which it was on which they voted and passed on recommendations to the village board.
Correct.
I'll entertain that motion.
JP seconded.
So moved.
Who moved?
Rick.
Rick.
Roll call, please.
No, do we have a second?
Second.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I'd like some clarification on what we're voting on.
Sending it back to the ZPA. Roll call, please.
Okay.
Nancy.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Kraus,
No.
Kozler,
No?
Cavelli,
No.
Chapman,
yes.
Dudek,
Yes.
And the mayor.
and Mayor.
Yes.
I'd like to ask Director Simmons to come to the podium and give us some feedback with regard to schedule and calendar as it would relate to the zoning board's schedule of items that are already preset.
At present, we have a petition that is likely to come in for February 11th. Has not actually formally been submitted as of yet. But otherwise, that's the only petition that I've seen coming in. So from a date standpoint for the hearing, it would be either February 11th or potentially February 25th would be the second board meeting in February.
So February 11th is the next scheduled zoning board meeting?
Or today's, sorry.
Today's the 19th.
The next zoning board meeting that's scheduled, or would be potentially scheduled, would be next Thursday, the 28th of January.
Is
But
there
there's nothing on the agenda at this point for that date. The petition that I'm anticipating coming would be February 11th. That would go before the board.
Is there a public notice requirement with the days schedule out? I mean, I'm just trying to understand the
Timeframe?
the obligations of the petitioner vis-à-vis having another hearing at the zoning board from the standpoint of the public that's with us. So, what's the process?
I don't think they're accepting more evidence. I think they're asked to reconsider the evidence they've already received.
Okay.
And the modifications?
And well, if they're going to be considering the modifications to the plan, then they're going to be having a new hearing to accept new evidence and weigh how the new evidence affects their vote.
May I ask a question as relates, would you consider that memo that Brian put together a piece of evidence, given the fact that it outlines 4 recommendations made going back to 1998?
I would comment that probably everything tonight is for evidence. I mean, all the comments from this meeting are, and that's inclusive in that.
Well, my whole comments about this that I brought up 2 weeks ago, saying that the way that CPA meeting ran is all related to the fact that it's very clear by reading the minutes that members of the committee didn't understand exactly whether or not they could vote on this issue. Brian went ahead and researched it and provided information that in fact, 4 out of 4, they have. So I believe it's very relevant.
I'm not saying it's not relevant, I'm saying that's a part of what they'll look at, certainly, that will be provided. They may look at other aspects of what's been said tonight.
As far as
And
the
so is the
public notice-
January 28th meeting is what's on the table here, and the question is that possible?
And as far as the public notice that was provided for this case, that information wouldn't modify any of the requested actions as far as there would be no density increase or variations increase beyond what the public notice for the project was out. So it's just additional information that they would have to consider for the project, but it wouldn't require modification of the public notice that was performed. I don't believe that would require doing additional public notice or 15 days notice before the hearing.
They're not requesting any additional relief.
Correct.
Okay. And do we think the chairman will accept the matter on the item, on the agenda for that night, January 28th?
There's nothing else on the agenda that evening, so I believe so.
Okay, and so that'll be our takeaway from tonight's meeting. My next question would be, from the standpoint of public notice for this board, standpoint of sign on the property, I mean, there are others that may have testified at the zoning board. Are we comfortable with that schedule from the standpoint of communication to the public? I mean, we'll do everything we can through Cary News Weekly. This is an unusual sequence of events, website, other mechanisms to get word out. Is the board comfortable with that? I want to make sure there's proper due process and that everyone on this board is comfortable with what's going on here.
I'm not comfortable with what's going on. I mean, you can send it back to the ZPA and they can talk about it again, but the decision was made, fine, send it back. But you got to be aware that the text amendment that passed last time may not pass this time. I'm just saying that this opens up the door for other things to be turned over, so.
I understand. I was trying to make sure that in light of the vote that was taken, that we communicate properly to the public, and Brian and I will do everything that we can to communicate the January 28th meeting so that the public is aware. So that's all I had. Just want to make sure we're on the same page.
When the point is made that this was at the zoning board and that the topics, the amount of time was 1 minute and 18 seconds spent discussing the variance for the ground floor dwelling. When it comes out tomorrow that 1 minute and 4 seconds was spent discussing the recommendation on the variance for the density per acre and about the absolutely obscene behavior that has gone on at ZPA, not only at this meeting, but at previous meetings. And Mr. Developer, I would say, God bless you, thanks for sticking around. I can tell you that it's very embarrassing to be in a community where we have village officials who write letters to developers and ask them not to come to our village. I'm absolutely appalled, I'm incensed, and I absolutely want to do anything that I can in order to give you a fair hearing. If it dies after a fair hearing, then that's the way it goes. But you know what? You're here and you deserve to have a honest hearing, and that's what we want to give you.
Well, last item, we will certainly communicate tomorrow with the zoning board members to make sure we have quorum, and we'll keep the board apprised as well as the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving along to other business, please. I will entertain a motion to approve Resolution R16-01-03, authorizing the destruction of certain audio recordings of closed session meeting minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I think this is something we've all discussed, and is there any other comments about this? Nope. None said. Roll call, please.
McAlpine?
Yes.
Chapman?
Yes.
Cosler?
No.
Cavelli?
Yes.
Dudek?
Yes.
Kraus?
No.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve Resolution R16-01-04, the establishment of a community event grant program.
So moved.
Second.
Jacob?
Mayor, thank you. We've discussed this event program a few times with the village board, received comments. We've made some edits since the last time that you saw it. As you'll probably see it within the document, we've pushed the date out to April 1st, 2016 to give nonprofits a little bit more time here to apply to the process. We've also modified the language. We've removed the requirement of them to provide donor information from the document, and we've added a few more questions just to get a little bit more sense of the event that's going to be proposed and how the grantees intend to use dollars. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have regarding it.
The only issue, Jacob, is that community groups don't work that way. Like, so establishing a date when they can start applying for that year's worth of money.
How about first call?
First call?
First call, and I mean,
Yeah, that's great, that's great. That's all I was saying is, because there are groups, that may come around in December and there is a house fire or something and they want to run a project, community-wide, but they didn't apply April 1st, 2016.
We included a provision in just for that point.
Okay.
To say that, if budget funds are available, we will accept beyond the deadline.
Well, what do we need to put that in there for?
Well,
I like the idea about first call.
Simply because our budget process,
Yeah.
ends right around then, and we wanted to see what a placeholder would be. That we would obviously got
Sure.
Other things, but certainly we'll look at it from a standpoint of having some funding allocated in the new budget for projects that walk in. I mean, we'll find a way to balance that. But if there was any pent-up demand, we thought bring it in now as we're going through our expenditure process.
Okay.
So we can roll.
All right, I got that.
I think once you establish a date, community groups will, over the course of time, conform to that date. I've seen that, I've experienced that in other communities that have this type of program. Once they learn that there's a schedule annually, they work around that.
Sure, but the way I read it now is if you don't apply by April 1st, 2016, you're out of luck, and that's not acceptable.
But it has a note on here too that says, the village may consider applications outside of the period contingent upon the availability of budgeted income. They added that in there. That wording was added.
Okay, so it's contradictory then,
In the memo or in the resolution, Trustee Chapman?
in the memo. In the memo where it's April.
That's fair. Our intention probably next year would be to hopefully back it up to March 1. That'd be optimal because of our budget cycle. But the document in the application, I can just set for the record in the minutes that'll be first call. And I'll make sure through the budget process to reserve funding for what was just described tonight.
Great.
We'll do that through the budget.
This is fantastic. I'm just getting.
I just like clarification. So regardless of what comes through, we'd still vote on this as a board, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Chapman?
Yes.
Kraus?
Yes.
Yes.
Dudek?
Yes.
Kozler?
Yes.
Cavelli?
Yes.
Oh,
McAlpine?
Yes.
Thank you. Finally, I will entertain a motion to approve Resolution R16-01-05, establishing an economic development task force.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll take this item with the committee's direction. I proceeded into a application process and then an interview process with 6 candidates that applied for an economic development task force, the first one for the Village of Cary. We had 6 excellent candidates from the community, and the idea was most likely to look for 3 or 4 candidates. I'm recommending 4 candidates tonight. Just to give you a quick background, again, I want to emphasize all 6 of them were excellent, and there may be other good opportunities for the other 2 folks to participate in other ways with the village that I'll speak with them about. But Jeff Boswell comes from a corporate consulting background, very interested in just volunteering for the community, not interested in necessarily other aspects of village government, but just wants to find a way to give back. He brings great corporate expertise. Laura Inverardi, community member, very networked in the community. She's an anesthesiologist and trust me, that will apply to economic development task force. We talked about that at the meeting. She has a great spirit, great interest in giving back to Cary. Angela Maxwell's coming to us from a banking and accounting background. Looked at loan profiles for small businesses for many years for MB Financial, and now she's presently working for Wells Fargo. Beth Repta comes to us with a real estate background, but also an interesting corporate background from the Walgreens Corporation. You asked me to look for 4 people that would work well together, that had a positive attitude, that would really help us with really a tank of gas to help staff continue to build momentum as we see this economy bouncing back. And I highly recommend these 4 candidates and appreciate your flexibility in allowing a process to be established. It's a little fluid. I understand that there's some questions about its purpose. I will emphasize that staff will work hard with this group, and I think you'll be very pleased. So that's my recommendation.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
I just had a couple of comments I wanted to make. Do you want?
Let me go first.
I just have some real reservations about creating this committee, this task force. I'm willing to go along with it, but one of the things when I ran the first time was that one of the things I ran on was establishing an economic development committee in the village. We had that debate as a board. New board members were on there with me. We decided to go with a hired professional economic development coordinator in the village. And so we decided to go with that route because what I had heard from previous trustees that had served on an economic development task committee in the past said that it wasn't effective, that they really didn't accomplish what they had hoped they were going to accomplish. So I'm saying if we're going to move forward with this task force, then I think we need to start, I'm going to pay real close attention and start really look for some results from this task force. Otherwise, I think then we need to start really reconsidering whether or not we need an economic development person in the village that's on our staff payroll. I'm not saying eliminate the position that Brian holds in addition to the economic development person, but the economic development position, I think then we need to reconsider whether or not we really want to be spending money on that in addition to a task force. So that's where I'm at right at this point.
And I just have one quick question, and maybe I missed it, it's quite possible. Does it say how long they're appointed for?
No, on purpose.
Okay, so it's kind of open-ended right now?
Task force idea is
Okay.
be open-ended. Let's, we'll put agenda
That's fine.
together over the next 6 to 12 months. And I think that's part of why we had some different applicants. It's not a 5-year, term. We'll make sure that we keep checking back with you about what's going on and how we're doing.
And Chris, I'd like to just ask our attorney, do you see any conflict? I work for Wells Fargo. I'm comfortable to abstain on Ms. Maxwell. I don't know her. If we need to separate that person out, it's up, whatever your guidance is.
I don't have any problem. There's no legal conflict.
Okay.
I'd like to also ask, will these meetings be video recorded? Are they going to be held down here? I'd like to have them video recorded.
I hadn't thought of that. That was not the intention. It was designed to be like a public meeting. We hadn't thought about video. I don't see a problem with them being recorded. I don't think they should be live streamed.
I don't need
yeah.
live streamed either. I'd like
Just
to
adds the
have it video
complexity of
recorded, and then if
having
I
it.
want to access it, I'll be able to watch it.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that. I don't think it'll change the dialogue. We've got the technology. We're probably going to use this meeting room most likely anyways, or make ourselves do that. I don't see a problem with that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Roll call, please.
Valley,
Yes.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Kraus,
Yes.
Chapman,
Yes.
Dudek,
Yes.
Kozler.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving along to administrator's report, Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to suggest we defer the item of the natural gas franchise ordinance that was tabled from committee. It's a significant discussion due to the late hour. We'll try to wrap it up in one night or so. I'm not certain we'll bring it to board. We'll probably bring it to committee first meeting of February. It's pretty important, but we have some flexibility with that. Secondly, I just wanted to emphasize what had been said earlier. I know some of us have seen many of these rating agencies online. This latest one, Wallet Hub. If you asked me what Wallet Hub or Nerd Wallet was, a couple years ago, I would have told you I have no idea. And I mean, we keep seeing Cary rate highly in just so many areas about the community. I think it's a great thing for all of us. Park District was very proud of it. It went out on Facebook and their Twitter account. just a good indicator. I mean, number one was a town downstate. Cary was 7. I think we're number 1 in McHenry County. Those are just all good signs of progress. The task force tonight, these are all good things. We got a lot of momentum. Sometimes these projects are tough to make decisions. There's more than one right answer, but you've got a lot of momentum. You should be proud of it. Thank you.
Moving to department head reports. Chief, you have anything for us? Sure.
In your packet, I had provided some information related to activity that occurred in December of 2015. Some highlights of that activity report are that traffic stops resulting in a citation or DUI showed an increase for 2015 as compared to 2014. Specifically, the DUIs were up 22%, and the arrests for no valid driver's license or unlicensed driving were up 50%. So that would be indicative that our patrol officers are out doing their job. There was a significant decrease in the miles traveled for last month. Remembering, of course, that a lot of benefit time is used for the month of December, and we still had 2 personnel out on family medical leave, and one that was graduated from the police academy and is now currently in our field training program. Good news is that compared to 2014, our traffic crash, I keep on saying accident, I'm sorry because I'm old, but traffic crash, by the way, 55, so I would apply. But my traffic crash comparison to 2014 was a reduction of 7.9% over last year. Wow. And again, sometimes it's omnipresence or presence of patrol officers just patrolling in regards to the high traffic areas. Sometimes there's no, it might be weather, it might be a lot of other things. So I'll take credit for it right now, but that's what our data is showing. I don't have any comparison data for traffic crashes as it relates to like the roadways. We've changed from DocView, which was a company that would accept our traffic crash reports and then we could sell them online. And we've changed to Avers, and they have a different way of compiling data, so we'll have some better data for you next year. Year to date, there was increases in burglaries, not excessively. Identity theft and deceptive practices, although I had thefts there, it went up in the month of December, but it didn't go up overall in the, as compared to the year 2014. The other part of that equation was that a lot of the thefts that we experienced in December were the thefts of holiday decorations. So it's unfortunate. Some of the other things that I would like to talk about. Any questions in regards to the report that was provided or any of the data that was provided to you? Okay. A couple other things I'd like to really touch on kind of on a high level here is that I'm your representative to the McHenry County Emergency Telephone Systems Board. And we had a PSAP consolidation committee meeting. PSAP is Public Safety Answering Point for those people that get caught up in acronyms. And we were tasked, or at least there's been a change in the statute that required that because McHenry County has one emergency telephone systems board, as opposed to Lake County that has a number of them. I think 19 is the number that's in Lake County, but we have one. And because we had one emergency telephone systems board and we had a population that was like in excess of 300,000 in the county, we had to cut our PSAPs from 6 PSAPs to 3 PSAPs. So we had to cut them by half. That committee made a recommendation that will be heard Thursday that the 3 remaining PSAPs in McHenry County will be CCOM, McHenry County Sheriff's Office, and McHenry City. For any number of good reasons, 3 PSAPs make sense for redundancy and for the desire of those municipalities that wish to be part of those or participate in those PSAPs. It does make sense to have certainly 2, 3 is probably better in regards to redundancy. We will be doing some more work through the PSAP consolidation committee because we have to prepare some information so that we can submit a request for grants to obtain grant funding to expedite this consolidation. So we'll be working on that. But it's important to, for you to know that there is going to be a reduction in PSAPs as required by the statute that had to be done by July 1st, 2016, that will be presented to the state police now, because the PSAPs and the 911 funds are now overseen by the Department of State Police and not the ICC. So there's been a lot of changes. There's some fluidity in terms of how things are going to be done because the administrative rules haven't necessarily been hammered out yet, but they're soon to be made permanent and moving forward. But there's been a very good group of people that have been looking at this on a statewide level, one of which is a ETSB member named Ken Caudle, who has a lot of knowledge, and he's the fire chief for Huntley Fire Protection District. Any questions in regards to that? I just hope that, Village Administrator, did you have any issues or?
No, I've been working for 7 or 8 months on the bidding side of this. It does look like our center is going to pick up some significant business. That's been on my work plan from the first day I got here from the village board. It's possible we might pick up as many as 3 police departments out of this at CCOM, which is great for building the base of work. It's been underway for a number of months. We're waiting to hear back answers, so we'll keep you advised.
Consolidation makes sense in regards to efficiencies and then for interoperability, because the more municipalities that share a communication center, the more information that gets transferred between municipalities and more efficient operations can occur. But there's other things that we have to consider, as well as just having them in one spot is how do you do it? And that's what we're going to be talking about at the PSAP committee. Just a couple other things. We started the domestic violence advocate, began working at the police department January 8th. She was able to intervene or provide assistance at a domestic violence incident. In fact, arranging for placement in a shelter for one of the participants there. So it was very timely in regards to having that individual readily available. And then for the, just a couple other things is there was a issue as it related to a energy solicitor. So in case someone, a constituent may contact you, currently there are but one permit out for someone that might be soliciting energy or alternatives to energy. But this particular energy solicitor, their permit had expired if it was indeed the individual that they purported to be that was reported to the police department. But what's more important is that your constituencies understand that they don't represent the village. And that was the other part of this equation that occurred. So if we can, we've been trying to do that on a regular basis to make sure that the residents understand that these, although they have a solicitor permit, they don't represent the village.
Is that what the deal was, Chief? Because I've been trying to figure out what it was and why we were in the business of trying to restrict, lawful legal businesses from going around and securing, bids for electricity. I didn't quite get it, but I mean, if that's what you're telling me is that they were pretending, and I know sometimes they stretch the truth when they're at your front door.
I think a couple of things. Number one, some people were uncomfortable with maybe, the approach that the solicitors were taking. Number one. Number two, there had been some allegations that they were purporting to represent the village. But I think more importantly, you're exactly correct. We don't interfere with commerce at the police department as it relates to the issuance of solicitor permits. There are specific criteria that we have to follow, and we issue those permits. So we can't deny anyone based on it. We can only educate people in terms of their rights and their abilities to make decisions. Okay. So that, but again, that was more related to the manner in which the approach was made, not necessarily what they were doing.
Right, and the guy that it might have expired.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
And then finally, we put out a press release today in regards to 2 residential burglaries that occurred in the 300 block of Bell and the 300 block of Claire. So you might hear some discussion in regards to that. We're working on that, and they both involved some forced entry to the residences at that time, one of which involved the theft of a vehicle from a garage. So, but that's been transmitted to the newspapers, and we're soliciting information as it relates to possible witnesses. Any questions in regards to that?
Couple questions, not
Certainly.
related to that. Your industry is taking it on the chin in the city of Chicago, and I think unfairly so maybe in some cases, but nonetheless, in my mind, the perception of police, men, women, is not what it was even 6 to 12 months ago, I think generally speaking, because of that. And we do some really great things here. I know the National Night Out and the cop on top of Dunkin' Donuts and all that, but I was just thinking as not a day goes by, it seems like you should pick up the Tribune and see something happening in Chicago and elsewhere even. You read about in Waukegan, I think, had some issues as well. Do you think there'd be any sense to having a police-sponsored, coffee with a cop or something, or get the police academy people to do, just like to make the community feel that, the police are here to protect you and to help. They're not people that go around necessarily shooting people for unnecessary reasons.
Yeah, I think that maybe there's a perception that we're taking it on the chin. I'm going to tell you what I tell everyone is that everything's cyclical. And when I started, police officers didn't have a real good, 30 years ago. Maybe, people didn't look on that profession as a, in a high regard. That changed on 9/11 when people wanted us at everything that they could get us to go to. And the police chief that I worked for at the time, I was a deputy chief, said, don't get used to this because this isn't going to last. And it did. So I think it's cyclical. I think that we do are the recipients of some very good community support here. I really do. I believe that people, I think that the police officers within the Cary Police Department do a very good job. I think that their intents are good. We can always do better, and we'll do that. And I think that it's incumbent on me to perhaps exercise more outreach. And I know that Jim Black from Crystal Lake is going to be using that Coffee with a Cop. It's been an IACP, International Association of Chiefs of Police, initiative for a while. But I know Bob Lowen and Jim Black. Bob Lowen from Woodstock has been doing it for a long time. Jim Black is going to start doing it. What I'd really like to do is not necessarily have Coffee with a Cop because I just don't. No. What I'd like to know is what people expect from the Cary Police Department. And I'd like to hit other community organizations and ask them that question, is what do you expect from your police department? And we can have, dialogue in regards to that. But I think you're right. That's on me, and I'll be working on that this year as it relates to, finding groups that I can address that I get a very big cross section versus trying to invite people to one location to have some type of beverage but that people can come talk to me anytime they want. They can call. I answer my phone. We have any number of police officers that'll answer questions for them also, and I'm confident in their abilities.
I don't doubt any of that. I think the only reason it's top of mind for me is because of all that's been happening in the city. And, I recognize that when we have the National Night Out, everybody's going to love it, and the kids will be all over the place and all that sort of thing, but that's months away. And it's cold, and it's winter, and you pick up a newspaper.
It's hard to get people to Main Street in the winter.
I understand. It's just a thought, something to not wait. And then the other thing, it's just interesting that we have our Cary Grove Chamber fella here today. I don't know if you guys saw the front page of the Tribune the other day about the issue in Wooddale. And so I have to ask you the question, do we have an evacuation plan in the event that Cary Days has a weather issue?
Yes, we do, in fact, and that was
Does
part of the
anybody
reason
know
that we
about
had,
that besides the police?
yeah, in fact, we had,
We looked at the
Yeah.
Wooddale case before this last event. I mean, believe me, it was
And-
top of mind.
we have an incident action plan, that's NIMS, that's NIMS nomenclature, and the reason that it was set up the way it was is so that we could open up the gates on either side and get fire equipment and things of that nature within that area. So that was part of the planning process, and the fact that we wouldn't allow restriction of the main aisle to a certain width, and what else?
There was a fire lane on Main Street, and there was that gate opening up at that Bema Harris drive-through.
So, and I-
People could exit out into the parking lot.
See, and I don't, I'm sure you had some quote evacuation plan. The issue that really caught my eye in this is people went to a tent and then a tent blew down. So what,
we don't have that, we don't have a big tent like that
I
at
don't
the
know
Main
if you'd
Street.
want one in the event of a weather issue.
And that may be, I used to work in a community that had one of those big tents, and we did have issues with those type of concerns as it related to, severe weather and, having, a tent pole that's 40, 50 feet high. So, no, it's a point well taken, and we did look at that from a number of different standpoints. And in fact, I believe Eric Morimoto had some input as it related to access to water during that event, because we didn't want to open up a hydrant and then induce a water main break and then have issue within the Main Street. So there's a lot of thought that went into that.
So, and then I'll end on this because, it makes me feel much better that this has been considered quite extensively. We don't have a place to go to in the event of a real bad weather issue, like a church or something like that that's close to where this is held, that, the police can in advance have that arrangement, because clearly just, I don't know, will we have most 1,000, 2,000 people at any one particular time? I mean, that'd be a lot of people to disperse very quickly in a relatively small area, and I think it could be kind of dangerous. So I just was wondering, as I read the article on Wooddale, in the event something came like that very quickly, where would people go? Running around doesn't necessarily solve the issue.
Well, hopefully, we would have some advance notice as it related to, we watched the weather reports during that time period. But I will tell you from my experience with the Cary Youth Baseball Association, when weather comes in like that, people find a way to get out of there relatively quick.
Okay. Thank you.
The cruise night's a great exposure for the Cary police. On the weekend cruise night, they have a big presence there. A lot of kids, a lot of people talk to the police, it's a real nice thing to see.
Mhm.
They do during the summertime, see more into the night out and that kind of stuff, so it's kind of neat.
I'd like to hear more about the Speakers Bureau that, Kim's department does, and not just for seniors.
We do a quarterly speakers bureau where we just educate the public on, you mentioned identity theft up. We're going to
Sure.
be doing a big identity theft presentation with the state's attorney's office and attorney general's office. We have one coming up about crime prevention through environmental design coming up next month.
Target hardening.
So, we do coffee with a cop, we do all that stuff, but it's good. It's good for the community. They like it. We partner with the library and a lot of that stuff.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Mhm.
Eric, you have anything for us?
In your packets are monthly summary of December 2015. Overall highlights some of the unusual winter events we had early season, and Mary Carey Parade. Just in addition to that, an update, we have January 26th, we have our public information meeting for the Three Oaks Road Design Project. We just issued, using a new, kind of save money and time, a new online postcard service to get notification of the meeting and link to our website for residents that abut the project and back up to it. We'll add some signage out shortly just to get some people that are a little bit outside that range aware of the meeting, and we'll encourage all the stakeholders to participate. So I welcome the public and the high school and the library and all the other stakeholders to join us for that meeting, learn more about the project.
maybe have a root beer with an engineer. No. I throw that in there, sorry. And then lastly,
And a pocket protector.
yeah. And lastly, we're continuing our efforts to promote some more joint bidding processes with other communities. We have some good things in the works with the Village of Lake in the Hills and the City of Crystal Lake, along with our other usual MPI projects. So more details to come as those get cemented, but we've got a lot of momentum going, and we will continue. Any questions?
I just saw the article in the paper about the GIS and that. Did you see that? Did you know that was in the paper?
Yes.
That's something I'm really interested in. I'd like to pursue that and move forward if we can.
Yeah, we'll look into that and others as well. Appreciate that.
Jacob?
No, sir.
Mary?
Thank you, Mayor. One very brief item. I just wanted to let the village board know that staff has officially kicked off the budget process. With that said, over the course of the next few weeks, each department will be compiling their respective budgets in anticipation of presenting a budget for the budget workshop discussion in the first part of March. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Brian?
Just a real quick update. Last week, the zoning board held a public hearing for two zoning requests that they recommended approval for both of them. One is for a cell tower at 30 Northwest Highway, which is right next to the ComEd right-of-way, just behind the All Marine property. And then the second is for a drive-through only Burger King restaurant on the corner of Jandis Cutoff and Route 14. So both of those requests will be coming before this board in early February, progressing through the process. Also, just brief update on some permit activity. I anticipate both the Kids Are Kids and Dunkin' Donuts projects will have permits ready to be issued within the next month. There's some revisions that they're making to the plans, but I envision those permits being out the door by the end of February. And then I've had some preliminary discussions with Starbucks that should be submitting permits for that project here very shortly to go through the review process. So some positive construction activity going forward here.
Kids Are Kids, is that Ruth Van Duser's place, or is that the one on?
Kids Are Kids is the daycare across from Deer Path Elementary School.
What about the old Rocky Raccoon?
They're still working on some modifications in here this space. They're moving forward in that. They are going to be spending for a sign. The zoning for the property requires conditional use approval for a monument sign. So they're going through the zoning process for that, but they're completing their remodeling for that, and I believe they should be open by the end of February time period.
Anything else? Thank you, Brian. Any other future agenda items and discussion by the village board?
I had one. In terms of the village's legal services, what are we currently operating under? Is it interim legal services now?
Right.
When are we going to make a final decision about who we hire?
We had talked about a 6-month time window. We're in a trial period. So, that's up to the board. I obviously, through the initial process, collected a significant amount of information. We made a decision on interim, and, we can pursue that any way you'd like.
I'd like to start moving forward on deciding who we're going to hire full-time.
Bring that back to the next committee meeting?
A discussion? Yes, if we have time, I'll have to set up, we have a couple things that move tonight, but I think to some point, to some level, we certainly can next time.
Kim, you had something?
Yeah. In light of some of the recent emails about the water billing, I guess, just for my own clarification, if we could have a discussion on that so I can understand more, how the process works. Are we being consistent with the billing? Just, I would like to have that discussion and open that up too, so that we're all on the same page.
Sure. I'd be glad to try and fit that into committee at the next meeting. Certainly glad to do it there at the village board that night, one or the other.
Thanks.
Anything else from this side? Nothing. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
No.
So moved.
Still getting that before.
All in favor?
Aye.
Who seconded?
Oh, sleep.
Did somebody second?
Yeah. Dave, you seconded it?
Yes.